Well, Lazarus. Echoes of ancestors. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, let me just be honest for a moment. I got caught with my knickers around my ankles, proverbially speaking, this evening. I was in the middle of a dinner party. One of my staff, my PA, completely forgot to give me the prompts that I had this very important broadcast on today. I just arrived a few days ago here in Bali at our base, and I've been, as some of you know, in the hinterland of Central and South Africa for the last few months. So I'm a little scrambled in the hemispheres. And then to top it all, today, one of my dearest and oldest friends in the world, the great Tantra master and spiritual teacher, Margot Anand, who happens to also be living in Bali. We've missed each other for the last couple of years. So today was a day that she and I decided we were going to spend the day together at my villa because she wanted to catch up on Lazarus. And here she is. So, Margot, just say hi.
Hi. Very happy to be with you here.
Very good. So Margot's going to sit in on the side as we now probe the minds, the hearts, and the psionic consciousness of three remarkable folk. Echoes of ancestors, friends. That's what this segment is called. Healing land, spirit, and sacred bonds. With Lazarus, veteran and pioneering man, polymath extraordinaire, Dan Winter. Lazarus needs no introduction to this extraordinary man. Dan, going to bring you in right now to say hi.
Nice to be with you there again. We're going to have fun today. Professor Ralf and Dalia are amazing. It's all good.
Well, let's continue on that strain. Today, we're discussing humanity's timeless bonds with the earth, the spiritual realms, and the sacred threads that weave our collective past and future. And we're privileged to have three extraordinary individuals who bring unique perspectives to today's exploration of ancestral memory, regenerative practices, and the echoes of ancient Egypt. Now, Dan Winter, as you all know, is the visionary scientist of consciousness and physics, offering his fascinating lens on the mechanics of energy, the plasma fields of spirit, and the deep science behind releasing ancestral blocks. Dalia Ali is a gifted Egyptian filmmaker and shaman who presents her deep-rooted connection with the lineage of Thoth, whose energetic and symbolic resonance continues to influence our understanding of humanity's spiritual evolution. Let me just bring you in momentarily there. Very good to meet you, Dalia. Thank you for joining us on Lazarus today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and I look forward to this amazing conversation with everyone here. It's simply the best.
Where are you? Where are you seated? Where are you right now?
I'm in Cairo at the moment, actually in New Cairo, so it's 30 minutes away from downtown center of Cairo.
Now you know I had my kind of metaphysical cherry popped in Cairo. I lived there for 3 years in Egypt, in Zamalek, and then in Mohandesin, and of course Giza Plateau. But I miss it desperately. But I'm going to be there later this year in October, so hopefully get to see you in person. You're going to be there.
That would be great. Absolutely.
Wonderful. And friends, lastly, Professor Ralf Otterpol, a renowned water engineer and geomancer who brings expertise in regenerative agriculture whilst linking the health of our ecosystems to the release of energetic trauma in the land. Let me bring you on here. Professor Ralf, happy to meet you.
Hi, Sacha. Thanks for having me.
Very good. And where are you seated, Ralf?
I'm at the moment in the Cape Verde Islands for an aquaculture project. And it's out in the Atlantic Ocean and off the coast of Senegal. So it's part of Africa. And so we want to set up some production here because it's mainly tourism, but they need local production. That's one of my topics.
Fantastic. How long are you going to be there for in Africa?
This time only shortly because we prepare the project, but I will be here for longer periods of time when it goes into practice.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're so happy to make your acquaintance, and thank you to Dan for that. So friends, he says, turning to his audience, together this panel intends to bridge the realms of science, spirit, and ancient wisdom to uncover how the energy fields of the past shape the vibrancy of the present and how we can collectively heal and harmonize our world. And that brings us to the questions: releasing ghosts and ancestral spirits, understanding energetic blocks. Dan, I'm going to ask you first, with your expertise in consciousness and physics, can you explain the mechanics of releasing ancestral spirits and stuck energies, and how do these unresolved energies affect bioregions and communities, and why is it vital to view ancestral energy, land healing, and spiritual practices as interconnected pathways to unity consciousness?
Well, talk about the right question. That's the right question. So, we had discovered some years ago, our friends in South France actually realized that you could kind of release stuck ghosts using some of our plasma tech, Therify.net, etc. And recently we've started this project, which has somewhat gone global, called physicsofsoul.com. And all of this has to do with how living plasma, whether it's the presence of a spirit entity, remote viewing, or the presence of ghosts, actually has to do with whether there's enough centripetal force to be distributed. So, short summary here, we know that at the time of death, for example, the 4 visions you see, the Heinrich Clouvet form constants, lattice, cobweb, tunnel, spiral, goldenmean.info/immortality, the pictures. So the reason you classically see this map at the time of death is your body has to implode in order for death to be successful. And that's a very electrical engineering concept. What we now know is that this pervasive field, I'm going to call it coherent longitudinal interferometry, but it's also known as the collective unconscious communion of saints, or songline dreaming track. This is referring to a field effect where coherent longitudinal fields, plasma literally, is propagating coherently from the body. If you have a soul, I mean, if your aura is coherent enough, and the situation that enables your aura to propagate there is compression, the implosion related to bliss and yoga and the discipline of a spiritual life. And so then your aura begins to radiate this coherently, the Ba from the Ka, Kesjan, all those terms, coherent longitudinal field. And when you can do that, then you can lucid dream and you can take memory through death, as it were, have a soul. And this physicsofsoul.com project started also in conjunction with Dalia here, who is, in my view, making almost daily phone calls to Thoth, and she'll say more about it. But he, in some ways, seems to be the administrator of some of this, how do souls get around? But anyway, to try to finish Sacha's perfect question, that when this plasma of people who have not had successful death, as it were, quote unquote, a stuck ghost, what happens is that charge distribution is inhibited. And if there's large scale stuck ghosts, for example, in places in World War II, for example, where a lot of people died and their ghosts really didn't successfully propagate, implode, and be distributed into the array. And being distributed into the array is named heaven or planes of Sharon, actually. And so when these plasma entities are still stuck, it radically affects not just the happiness of people, but literally the fertility, because fertility is charge distribution. So, for example, if someone is having a bliss experience and there are stuck ghosts, the ghost actually uses the aura of the healthy person to implode and then be successfully propagated or released, similar to the implosion of plasma and Therify.net, which incidentally is how Dalia had some of her experiences. So I became also very impressed with Professor Ralf one day, who has amazing books on regenerative agriculture and all the fun stuff. Professor Ralf is amazing. He saved our conference, by the way, by teaching people some of these things. He's great. But anyway, one time he was telling me about, he went to this island north of Germany where there was a beautiful place, but very depressing. And he realized that there were a lot of stuck ghosts, and he figured out how to release ... And I was
fascinating. Okay, well, that leads us to that question. How did you release them, Ralf? Let's just jump straight in there.
You're muted, Ralf. You're muted. Ralf, you're unmute. Oh yeah, unmute. There you go.
Go. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, releasing ghosts is something we can do on a practical matter. So those who are mind boggled now by how Dan Winter is expressing this in a very scientific way, it can be done in a very practical way without really knowing all the background, but the background makes it easier to know your ways in, the structures and all that. And releasing stuck ghosts is really relating to them. And sometimes they are there since decades, hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years. So it's a tragedy because they are trapped in a realm that is not very pleasant for them often. And often they try to suck energy, and so they become a sort of energy suckers. And when there are too many from war, also from accidents and natural catastrophe, if people die suddenly, they are traumatized usually. And this trauma is stuck, and the people can't die successfully, as Dan names it correctly. I like that. And so we can relate to the deceased ones, explain them that they are dead. Many are not aware of that. Can you still hear me?
Yes,
We lost you a little
Can you
bit.
still hear me? Is to address the deceased one, explain them that they are dead. Many are not aware even after decades. And so when we make them aware, the technique I apply from sort of geomancy is to ask them, those who want to be released, please stand in front of me. Sometimes it's a few, sometimes it's hundreds, can be thousands. And then you explain them, well, I can show you the way to go further, so to make the death successful now after decades or long time. And so then I sort of sense, well, they are all there, and some are hesitant. So I tell, well, just join. You have the chance of your time here. May not come that early again, and then many more are joining. And then I ask spirit beings, and I always do this through the connection of the source of this universe, where we are all connected through our heart. So that's my capacity. I'm connected to the source of this universe, and through that I ask for suitable beings and suitable numbers of beings to join. And then I ask these beings to arrange with the deceased ones that they can release their trauma and that they find their way. They are taken by the hand, so to say, and then they can actually find their own way. And explain them, don't go to any light or something. Watch around, find your own pathway. And so that's basically the thing on releasing the ghosts.
So thank you for that. But just kindly, just extrapolate a little bit more on what you said a moment ago, which I've also wittingly or unwittingly been preaching for some years, although I don't understand the subtle mechanics of it that I think that you and Dan and Dalia would. But the business of not following the light. Don't follow the light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's kind of what you were inferring there. Is that correct?
It can be confusing. Some people believe that, for example, the residue of giant parasite beings.
Not exactly. Not.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Professor. Are we losing you?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, the thing is that it's not following the light, but it's to keep a clear mind on that level, because that must be done in a conscious way, not just following the first guidance or what attracts you, because it may be a trap, and maybe even the trap of like reincarnation or like karmic capture. And so I advise them. And I have learned that, so I did a lot of wrong stuff there as well. Like this, it's not very easy to get clear. And now I say, find your own way from your heart, from the center of your heart. Look around. If you want to go to the light, after realizing where you are, what you want, they can go. But it's like I keep it free. So look around, and maybe they see, I want to go to source, or I want to join other family on other planets, whatever, I don't know. These realms are so vast, and I haven't traveled them so much in this body, but it's
very good. Thank you. This is helpful. Dalia, spiritual collaboration in clearing practices. You've spoken about working with higher dimensional beings like Thoth to assist in clearing intense spiritual and energetic stagnation. So how can individuals or communities cultivate similar collaborations, and what are the risks involved in engaging with this type of work?
Yeah, thank you for that question. What I want to say also is I work with Thoth, but I am the living avatar of Thoth, which is kind of a different concept. So when one is embedded within their higher self array, you then get access throughout all of the living Ba's and the Ka's of ancestral memory. So I have access to the intelligence of Tahuti, Thoth, as a multidimensional being, an immortal. And I also have the experience and knowledge of the ancestors that come before me that have done this work. So this is just the value of connecting and embedding within your higher self array, and everyone has access to that. It is a path that definitely doesn't come without risks and sort of initiations and tribulations. I can talk more in detail about that.
Please do.
Yeah, okay, because it's a bit of a tangent to the releasing of the ghosts, but I can talk more.
Like when Thoth helped you clear that schoolyard and that graveyard, I thought those were great examples.
Yeah, but the line, the sort of the initiation path to connecting to your higher self array is pretty trying and testing, especially in my lineage, the ancient Egyptian lineage, which we are all part of. In some way or another, whether close or far in our genetic ancestry. It comes with a series of, let's just say, near-death experiences and tests that will test you. You will get tested with higher dimensional or other dimensional negative entities, parasitic entities, and there are a lot of tests about discernment. So you need to be able to see the truth from the lies and evaluate the false light, which Dr. Ralf and Dan were referring to, because a bit of this game, this matrix game, is about considering what is truth, frequency, and what is false light, pretending to be all-knowing, omnipotent, omnipresent light. So that is a great test also that you go through. So this is more about the initiation path. And knowledge of death. So you die before you die. Yes. And you go through near-death experiences. And one of the experiences I had to go through is a memory of actually dying. And so I went through death, and I've seen, it doesn't look like a tunnel of light, same way as the near-death experiences they refer to. It looks more like a mandala, like a fractal. That is light and colors, and that was before my my transfigurations. So that was 4 years ago, but it's still I perceived it as a mandala of light. That was incredible. It really is a bliss experience. So death is an actual bliss experience, and it's ecstatic in many ways.
Did you want to tell them about your experience of the death of Tutankhamun, for example?
I can do that. Yeah.
Go on.
Okay. I experienced the past life memories. Once I went through this current stage of my transfiguration, I experienced past life memories as it relates to Tutankhamun, which means the living avatar of Amen, who's Amen-Ra, the chief deity in Egypt. So that was his name. And I experienced my past life memories as Tutankhamun, who was also connected to Thoth. And so, and how he was murdered, which is a big mystery that nobody actually knows how he died. But I remembered it, and it was incredibly painful. And he was murdered through his right eye. A mixture of blue lotus and poison in the eye of Ra. And this is, upon coming into this incarnation, I had physical experiences because we carry ancestral trauma. So we can come in and incarnate into this body and still wreak the havoc of unprocessed ancestral trauma. And this is why I have this scar, because I had an accident as it relates to the eye, by which Tooth was murdered, and other physical symptoms as well that relates to his past life. Just like he had a lazy left leg and a right leg. He walked with a stick. So I experienced a lot of the pains that he experienced growing up. And the only explanation was Thoth helped me remember my past life memories as taught. And he was murdered, of course, by I and the military guy. And that kind of started the curse of Egypt losing its power. And the lineage that is now in power is the lineage of military dictators from that time, where they stole the power from the king, the royal descendant.
So you're stressing that the Mubaraks of this world have all been connected genealogically to that same pharaonic lines going back 3,000 years, 2,000 years.
Yeah, the military dictators, the tyrants of the nowadays, they're mostly part of the social memory complex of Horemheb, and also I, who is a priest as well. So the politicians were the dark magicians, the priests that really coveted the power back in the day. So
fascinating. Professor Ralf, restoring life to the living soil. Regenerative agriculture plays a central role in your vision of a healthy planet. How does the release of trauma within the energetic grid of the soil or the land contribute to soil fertility and agricultural success? And how can this be integrated into modern farming practice?
Yeah, well, it's actually the most crucial step to go. So I work on geomancy privately since like 35 years or something. And I never thought it would come back to my professional life, because I still do a lot of research on restoring soil. And the term regenerative agriculture is good if it's not misused. Some industries are misusing it already, but if we stick to the principles, like not plowing deep, because that destroys the soil life, and then introducing soil fungi, bringing in green manure, having plants that are deep rooted to bring more organic matter into the soil, include animals. So the bashing of animals is completely crazy, because they are part of the ecosystems. And agroforestry, obviously, agroforestry with food trees, so we can grow a lot of food from the trees, and that's excellent food because they are deep rooted. They get all the trace elements, and so that makes very, very nutrient rich food. And I was teaching and preaching in that, and so that was, for me, it was sort of, okay, that's it. But then I got the experience that some farmers, they do everything as it is in the books, but still it doesn't work. And so when I realized that, and one stunning example for me was in a farm in southern Germany, a regenerative farmer since 30 years, very successful, everything fine. His nutrients density is higher than everything. So he sells everything direct marketing, because people really want this high quality food and fodder. And then I did a seminar with them. And then one of the other farmers told me privately, well, I do everything like Dietmar is doing, but it doesn't really work so well. It's doing okay, but I'm not really as well as Dietmar is. And so I told him, well, in that case, it's probably energetics. Went there the next day, and we found that there is there was the gallows of the village was directly above the hill on where the farm is and the village is. Energy was very low because of all the stuck ghosts and gallows must be horrible. You can release ghosts pretty easily, but those that died on the gallows, it's horrible. It takes time. You must convince them. It's like getting them out of the depths of the earth and convincing them, come up. And it takes 15 minutes instead of 5, so it's still doable, but it's not pleasant. and then released these spirits, and then the energy was sort of rising significantly. And what I realized, you can raise the energy in a field to like good values, but it's not 100% because there is some task for the locals, as I see it. So the locals must connect. And this is what people in Bali do. Bali is well known for the geomancy. They do the yearly, they build these huge demons, and they carry them around.
Oga festival.
And, and so they built these huge demons, and so they carry them through the roads and do drumming and everything. And the ghosts, so friends of mine who are clairvoyant, they have looked at that from all perspectives. The demons, stuck ghosts and everything, they're attracted to these paper demons. They go in there, and then they are burned ceremonial. And these ghosts even come out of the houses through the drumming. So you summon them into these paper demons, and then they are burned in a ritual. So getting them out or releasing the ghosts, things like that. So, and it's not very often. This was practiced in many places of the world, I'm sure. So this is old knowledge that we can really revive now with some scientific background, like what Dan does, and by sorting out how to do it. Before it was the shaman, and if the shaman was going crazy or trapped by dark entities, he would go crazy and do dark stuff. And we need, everybody should be a bit shaman and to be able to perceive these things. And it has become so much easier to learn these things. And at the same time, the challenges are rising because these rising vibrations, it's not only good for us, but also for the parasitic entities. And so they are attracted to that. And we have a lot more of those now. So they are trying to sort of grab the whole energy because people are not getting it. So people are behind. So the parasites are sort of grabbing people get depressed, and it's more difficult for them to get further. And so we need a structured way that is learnable, teachable, so that people are getting starting their life, not being just like zombie mode, but being connected to nature, being connected to the different energy levels, having basic knowledge. So it's galactic kindergarten, so to say. And I think it's a great time now to go through that.
Indeed. So I'm interested in you mentioned the gallows, and you mentioned these stuck ghosts that had a palpable impact on the soil, and that's fascinating, and that speaks to, of course, the living principles of Feng Shui and Vastu and so on. And how and why the orientation and the elements and understanding these living principles becomes so important when we're designing our lives. But can you just walk me through this business of you freeing those hungry ghosts? How do you know whether are you using a pendulum? What's the actual process you've got of engaging with these disembodied spirits and being able to evaluate and judge when you've done your work? I mean, just walk us through that process, please, because for me it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. When I teach geomancy, I start showing people the rods. So that's very easy. People can get a grasp. There is a waterway and things like that. So that's a starting point. But then I teach people to feel with their hands. So feel the energies. Most people get that. If I have like 40, 60 people in my class, most get it within 15 minutes or something. So that's absolutely great. And you can use tools like pendulum or tensors. There are many choose what you like, but many people misuse pendulums. So I'm warning a bit about pendulums. So it has its role, but it's learning to discern from our inner knowing, and the inner knowing in the heart. It's not like in the brain, it's not pineal gland, it's the heart, center of the heart. And so that's something where we can, if we start with sensing these things with some instrument and so on, but in groups, not doing it alone. Like,
you broke up a bit, Professor Ralf, but I think the point was that you then, when you can hear the voice of your heart, you can tell what spirits are present and what's happening there more. Maybe while Ralf comes back in, maybe Dalia would like to say a little bit about how she did that in that graveyard, in that schoolyard. Is that relevant?
I could do that. Yeah, absolutely. The approach of higher self Tahuti Thoth works with the plasma beings, the serpents of Kundalini. So anyone who has access to bliss or understands tantric, because you mentioned tantric Kundalini experiences before. This is actually one way of understanding how the magnetic lines of the earth work. So, and Dr. Ralf has mentioned that there are many people who are trained as shamans, but at the same time, maybe they lack the discernment, maybe they lack also dominion over the land, because this is a different approach. The way that Tahuti works through me is there are no questions asked and there is no dialogue. So it's kind of like an invoker of judgment. It's like, time is up, it's time to clean up. And it really is that simple. So we'll send everyone where they need to go, no questions asked. He goes in, he sweeps sort of the, let's say we work in a cemetery, which is one of the instances that we worked was in the cemetery right next to Mauer Park in Berlin. So that is, of course, a place where lots of trauma and lots of war trauma happened in that place. And the war, and the wall kind of interfaces with the cemetery. So a lot of lost souls there were stuck because there was a wall. And some of these souls are very innocent, and they're kind of like not sure where the door is, and there's nobody there to help them out because we don't have enough shamans, unfortunately. We need to have more shamans to help the spirits of the deceased to exit and to enter through the gateway, which could be the sun. So we send them through the sun as a portal, or to the galactic center. If there are leeching, demonic, or parasitic entities, the term parasitic is more accurate. And so if these entities, well, he works with the entities by sending them to the galactic center, and there, like I said, there are no questions asked. He gathers them around my right arm as if you're working with a roll of yarn or something, and he rolls them like that, and he takes them all. He gathers them throughout the space, the periphery, and he sends them. He creates a portal, and then he sends them through this portal. But of course, a lot of them are very, very stubborn, so they would fight and resist, especially the entities that leech of the Bas, or the living souls of children, and these are gnarly and the worst, because there's nothing worse than living off or leeching off the pure souls of children. And the children are, they're gold, and we must protect them, and we must protect the parks. And part of what we were talking about, me and Dan and Dr. Ralf previously, is the presence of 5G towers, which emit signals that lessen and weaken the souls, every soul. It's soul snatching frequency. So some of these frequencies that are present in this, the technology of these cellular towers of course, can be reprogrammed, like Dr. Ralf also mentioned before, and he maybe can speak more about that. But they always surround schools and parks, and you can see it, you can notice it. So what Thoth does is he casts a magnetic field of Ma'at. So Ma'at, you know, this is harmony and divine justice. And of course, it's an ancient Egyptian concept, but it's also a frequency, the flower of life frequency, the sacred geometry of that. And it can be protective over the entire park and the entire schoolyard. And after he casts that magnetic field around like a bubble, he goes in and he cleans it up. And of course, for the graveyard, he would then open up the gates. Because, like I said, some of these lost souls, they don't know where the exit is. So he opens up the gates and he calls them in to it's here, and he shows them the way. And like I said, he shows them the way, and it's the most incredible moment of joy, because these spirits can now walk home, travel back home to their source. And then you can feel the energy of the park or the graveyard uplift. So the people in the graveyard, instead of being frowning and heavy and depressed, they will start smiling. And I've seen that in front of my eyes instantaneously before and after I've done the work. And it takes around 30 minutes or 50 minutes or so to finish if it's a big graveyard. And you can see the bliss frequency is immediately. You can feel it. You can see it in the light. The light quality is different. People's energies are much more uplifted when we send the souls back home. It's a great moment of joy and celebration.
Margot has a question that she wants to put.
Yes, I want to ask you, is it possible to be in a place where these people who weren't able to do their transition after they died, I was there, is it possible to sing the mantra of someone like Padmasambhava or some great master of the past, and as a group sing this mantra, visualizing that a portal opens for these beings to be released? Would you say that this is possible? Because we had that experience.
Absolutely. And Dan also had that experience. Maybe Dan, you can mention your story, but absolutely. Yeah.
Well, just to say, you know, Vincent Bridges, many of you heard of, he was absolutely convinced the reason Padmasambhava was named Sam, if you read Anton Parks, was that's another name for the Enki Thoth lineage, who was absolutely involved in that work. And if you know where Padmasambhava melted the stone with his handprint because his plasma was so strong, you can go there. So yes, it's a matter of gathering the resources of the lineage of ancestral plasma. Right on.
Thank you.
Are you happy with that answer?
Yeah.
You are. Very good. Dan, you often connect the vitality of life systems to the presence of centripetal energy fields. And can you just explain how these energy systems relate to regenerative agriculture, and what lessons can be drawn from ancient land management practices that embrace these harmonics?
I'd like to thank the 30,000 people who watched the new films we just made. How does a charged vortex make gravity? And we actually make the point that once you understand how a vortex becomes centripetal, of course, then you know how the Nazi bell, Vimana Hanabu, and Mercury made gravity, and how the vortex of charge in the synapses of your brain make gravity becomes centripetal and implosive, after you learn, of course, why objects fall to the ground. So it's all about learning how a vortex becomes centripetal. But once you know that, then obviously you can learn what causes a seed to germinate, as Theraphia's plasma does, which is centripetal force, which is one of the primary functions of many of the original stone monuments, was to germinate seeds, actually. And obviously, this was the key to Dalia and our project, and most of Dalia's films are there at physicsofsoul.com, which says then you can know what a soul is, which is your aura getting centripetal enough to radiate in that way of coherence, Ba from the Caucasus, which is the longitudinal array penetration and distribution. And distribution in that array is we electrical engineers language for most everything Dalia and Professor Ralf are just saying. So the key being obviously to get centripetal, or as the bumper sticker says, get centripetal or get dead. So recognizing how, whether you're setting up a vortex in mercury or piezoelectric water for Schauberger to make gravity, or a vortex in a pyramid to attract the Schumann phase conjugate pump wave to then create global wireless power, it all starts with the science, and I do mean electrical engineering science, of knowing how a vortex makes gravity and centripetal force. Then you can generate fertility, you can generate a soul. So basically this business of getting centripetal is a pretty good electrical engineering introduction to all these topics, which we think we did pretty good at physicsofsoul.com. 20 documentaries there now.
Wow. So humor me, Dan, momentarily. How does centripetal anything apply to my credo in life is one sentence. Pure truth and right action in the living moment is the path of least resistance to the highest outcome, always in all ways. That's something I've really sat with for decades, and I can't better it. So how does pure truth and right action in the living moment become the path of least resistance to the highest outcome? What is centripetal about that equation? Can you just explain those mechanics?
That is so perfect. It's absolutely perfect, Sacha. Perfectly the right question. So what we're saying is what you're calling pure truth is what we would also call pure principle, which we always said, if you think pure principle all day, your hair is going to stand up so much by imploding capacitance that you will never need to die because you got centripetal enough. So the actual physics is that, for example, at the moment of death, successful death requires a black hole for exactly this reason, because in that array of pure principle, pure truth, literally, it is perfect compression that enables the distribution into the array. In other words, it's very high voltage in there, meaning that, the reason you have to see your whole life in 1 second before you die, there's compression. That life review is a process of imploding into that array, because that array of perfect compression, what you're calling pure truth, is 1 billion years of DNA gathering survival memory. That library is called collective unconscious. And access to that array means you will not die successfully if you have anger, because it's uncompressible electrically, the opposite, actually. So to get into that array, it means you've processed all your life experiences down to pure principle, which is of service to everyone, which is exactly what Sacha's just saying here. And so to do the compression, to be part of that array, that implosion is part of the bliss process. You suddenly, first thing after I had Kundalini, I had 3 months of crying continuously. I was processing every unshareable thought of the previous life.
Wow.
And so that's the process. After that kind of compression, you're called enlightened, literally because you can inhabit the array due to compression, which is pure principle. Exactly. Sacha's insight.
So, Professor Ralf, you showed us those rods a moment ago. Now I am familiar with them, but is that something which you can do? You can apply that to anything at any time, or do you have to psych yourself into it?
Well, the rods are very simple because people have an experience right away. Even people that have done nothing before, and I even did this with engineering students. They are around the toughest to teach such stuff, because this is used to find water. So there is a proof of that these things show something that is very relevant. And then for making more with the rods, you can ask rods yes and no questions. You can ask them directions. Some people do amazing things, even archaeology with rods. You can find old temples by having the rods point you into this direction. So you can do a lot, and I use them a lot to look for these huge ley lines, the energy lines. Because besides that the stuck ghosts are sucking out energy, many of these huge ley lines are sucked out by dark entities, once again, through traumatization of these lines. These lines are conscious. If there is war and bombing, then these dark entities grab it, and they can, from then on, they can forever suck lots of energy, and that's very bad for the people because they can't really develop right. The children are not developing very well. They don't feel well. People are depressed a lot more. And so it's crucial to find these lines. And then it's always this discernment. What is the root cause of this energy loss? So it can be stuck ghosts. It can be parasitic entities. And we have a new category since a couple of years, and this is synthetic entities that are made by AI. And these are, as Dalia pointed out, they come through Wi-Fi towers, they come through like internet and so on. So we need to keep our etheric hygiene to not being attacked all the time. And if our vibrations is high, we are safe. So it's like coming down through anger and all that would make us vulnerable. So we will be grabbed and sucked out further. And so, and this is when there is this quote of Jesus Christ when he said, "Those who have, they are given more," something like that. And that means those of high energy, they sort of attract energy. It becomes very easy. And so daily check-up is crucial. And then, as Dan was saying, we need to release all trauma, like things that come through previous lifetimes, be it in this past or be it on other planets. So that's very complex as well. And then we can release these things and we have a lot of energy. But then it's, again, parasitic entities, stuck ghosts, these synthetic entities. And there is something what I found recently that is highly relevant in my point of view. And this is what geomancers call dark angels. But so far, they didn't really know what they are. But now we found out. And it's like... these are the workforce for manipulation. So the parasitic entities, they suck energy. So we can deal with that. So we can throw them out. And then with these dark angels, they seem to be manipulators. So make people believe in nonsense, and they are in a world of hallucination, but they think this is real, and this is very subtle. And also, Dalia has pointed out, we need to look what is the level of nastiness of an entity. There are entities that I wouldn't touch, so I leave them alone. Luckily, they are not so often.
But stop Ralf, stop there if you will. So talk about that. What kind of malevolent entity won't you touch? And how do you know that you've just reached a level of malevolence that you won't touch? Again, I'm trying to slow down the tape here so people, especially the layman, can understand this incredibly enigmatic language.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's this is once again the testing. You could do this with a pendulum or something on the level of entities that are easy to what I can do with all my force. Where is this? And then I get a reading. I can do this just by visualizing that. And then I get, okay, it's at 60, 70%. So I know this is a bit of work, but they are doable. And it's more the level, management level. So the easy ones are low-level workers of these forces, so to say. And then higher pay grades, they are more skilled, they're more nasty, and that goes up to levels that I wouldn't touch, because that's the top level. I don't go there yet. This task will come, I have sense, but it's not yet. But we need to discern, because it can really grab us and tear us down for a very long time. It's very difficult to get out of that. I've seen people having that.
Yeah, very interesting. And sorry, did you want to say something there, Dalia?
I have many thoughts. I could say something. Yes.
Yes.
I was going to suggest that maybe as we move to a conclusion, you also mention what Thoth has been telling you about the fact that major global cataclysm upcoming is direct, for example, magnetic tilt, whatever, is directly affected by more and more people able to get a soul and make the centripetal force, the sort of climax message of those. Anyway, that's why, but please say what you like. But
yeah, okay, definitely. I can get into that. But first, I wanted to say the best immunity for any person or any shaman is to work with their own Kundalini. So, you're as good as your Kundalini at the bottom of your spine. And so the concept of the coiled serpent is not just trapped energy, but also trapped memories. And whether it is from this life or past life, this is up to your life, your path, what you're here to resolve. So the work of the shadow work or the healing of trauma or transgenerational trauma, you go from the personal of this life to the ancestral, your family, bloodline family, and then you go to the galactic stuff, and also you work with the collective energies as well. So it comes in layers and levels. The more you clear and the more you work with your trapped or coiled serpent at the base of your spine, the more powerful you become, and the more immune you are to these negative entities, because these entities, they latch onto leakage. So Earth has leakage from trauma of war or unresolved ghosts, but also the body of the human has trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma, so on and so forth, or multi-generational trauma or psychic trauma. So these entities, they latch. So any unresolved trauma in the body or in the system, these entities will latch onto them, use it as a weakness point, and kind of engulf you, keep you in a dark fog state where you're unable to see things clearly anymore. And they work really heavily with shame, because shame sort of covers the eyes. And so part of the soul work and the healing work is returning the glow of soul, the golden light of the solar plexus. And this is our immunity. So the vitamin C of the soul is truth and becoming a shareable wave, like Dan talks about, which is pure intention and purity of action, like you mentioned, Sacha. And this is how you become immune to these entities. And then you have no fear, because you know what their weakness is, and then you know how to, you're no longer vulnerable to them.
So, curiously enough, Margot and I were this morning, she brought about 300 French pastries for breakfast and expected me to eat them all. But we were talking about this exact subject was what we were talking about this morning. We were speaking about the state of witness, and how I was speaking to the fact that yesterday I was on for a couple of hours with a journalist who was asking me to comment on the apocalyptic what's happening in California right now. And I find it very, very hard nowadays to become emotionally charged by anything that resembles the apocalypse. I find that the geometry of the living moment is perfect always in always, and can only ever be thus. But the only variable is the degree to which I am able to inhabit a state of witness in the geometry of now, wherein and whereupon everything is perfect always and always, and can only ever be that way. And so that takes us also to Dan's shareable wave, a bliss peak wave. And I find that even in the midst of the most apocalyptic unfoldments, that state, I wouldn't call it bliss necessarily, but that state of grace is available, is accessible. In the last few weeks, I witnessed the death of my girlfriend, and for the last 2.5 years, I was traveling around the world with her, trying to push that death away. And she got a 3-week prognosis to live 2.5 years ago, so we managed pretty well. And I kept it very, very secret and very private. But the last couple of years has been a journey for me, a very slow journey through the shadow of the valley of death, until 1st of October, when she kicked off with an angelic lightning bolt extraction, which different sensitives had been observing her moment of death, and they said they'd never seen anything like it. It was like a catapult that came down, grabbed her, and extracted her instantaneously. And what I know is that is that the process of that long, protracted journey through death of a beloved technically is the worst possible thing. It's the most appalling, one doesn't wish that on anyone. And yet I have to say, it was just in its own way, the perfection of the geometry was extraordinary and deeply, deeply sobering, deeply, deeply empowering. And that just continued to underscore in my own life and my own pursuit of noble, purpose. It underscored that fact that if we do not psycho-emotionally identify with the shit show of reality, the dialectic that's always playing out, whether it's an angelic or a demonic, or it's a win or a loss, or it's an up or a down, or it's a firestorm in fucking Los Angeles, or it's a great deluge in the. It doesn't matter. Whatever's playing on the checkerboard of the kingdom of the devil is there as a great Zen master to keep us mind fucked into that dialectic until one fine day we achieve that state of serendipity and grace, despite the apocalypse, despite the Armageddon. In fact, because of it, we alchemize into that still point, and we find that state of witness where we are no longer able to judge anything, nor would we judge anything. And we certainly don't identify with the dialectic. And in that state of grace, I believe we move into a harmonium, a place, a quanta that is in, to use another of Dan's famous expressions, phase conjugation, alignment with the divine living principle of the Atman. And then I am creator. I am creator in that living moment. And it's the most beautiful thing. Isn't that what we arrived at today? Because we're both getting old, and in our decrepitude, we're both arriving at that same point. In any event, I wanted to invite each of you, as we wind down, I wanted to invite each of you just closing comments. And I wouldn't mind if you would each of you speak to the apocalypse unfolding in California. I think it's an important one for great seers like yourself, Professor, and Dan and Dalia. I think it would be helpful, certainly to the Lazarus audience, if you could just lend a commentary to this, because we've just begun the great year of Upshift 2025. We are hurtling, in my view, towards ground zero of this magnificent upshift that is going to be occurring and that is already underway. And a lot of people are obviously terrified by these kind of apocalyptic scenarios. Personally, I'm not. I see them as being, again, Zen masters giving us the great beneficence of the realm of duality so that we can alchemize in the living moment into a higher octave of expression. But speak to the apocalypse in California right now. And I'm going to start, if I may, with you, Professor Ralf.
Well, yes, I think that's very relevant because also, as you pointed out, it may become more crazy. And for me, it's something like not getting entangled into this is good, this is bad. So some of the stuff may be exactly what these souls needed. They arranged it on some level. And so judging that is... we don't know the backgrounds. Of course, there's tragedy, and of course, to have compassion, but not going into it emotionally. So to see what is going on, but then moving to the energetic level and seeing what is unfolding here. And that's a bigger picture. So we are in a fantastic theater game where there's now some action, finally, if it's decades and decades of just cake and coffee every day, that would be a life where you wouldn't develop much. And for dealing with this stuff that is going on, I think it's crucial that more people go into learning these energies, to how to deal with the energies, how to distinguish between the different levels. And I'm so grateful for Dan that he's really making a scientific system out of it. I've gone into that. It's making things easier. And so people should really learn a little bit about geomancy, or whatever you call it in your region. Shamanism, it's like the Vastu, or like many traditional techniques, develop themselves, because that's like raising our energy is the main thing we can do. On one hand,
Ralf, we're
from the
losing your voice.
craziness, to come from craziness to something great, individual, also as a society, if more people join in, that, well, we need some 100 million people more joining in, so that would be incredible and powerful, but it takes time. So processes are slow. I'm relaxed with this now. And so I hope all the listeners, I'm sure many of you do stuff, but it's like, learn the discernment on the levels, what is there. It's not that difficult, but it's also, if you don't not know what is cake and what is steak, then, well, how can you judge? And
Very
so,
good.
yeah, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Professor. Delightful. Dalia, can I invite you also to comment on that same question as the apocalypse apparently is unfolding? How do we use this as the perfect contrast against which we define our angelic humanity?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for everything Dr. Ralf said, and also what you said, Sacha. I resonate with is like getting out of the duality thinking and stepping into non-duality, not seeing black and white, just seeing that it's all part of a divine plan. It's all part of the greater good, because nature has a way of correcting itself. So we can look at the fire as a purification of the land, a purification of the energies that live on the land, the conscious beings that are making choices that live on the lands. And not everyone is there for the same reasons. Some people are there also to be part of that experience. Some to be witness, as you said, Sacha, which is very important, to be witness. This is the healing process, is to be witness. But at the end of the day, this is when we talk about cataclysms or nature correcting, it's a course correction. That's what it is. Because humans have been really on, don't want to say wrong path or right path. People make choices, and it's sort of the path that leads to extinction. And that was the warning message from Horus, my galactic soul, as a messenger. He's here to tell people that the further you are from soul, from connection to the creator, or the divine creator, which is part of the cosmic existence that we are all a part of. We're not just earthly beings, but we are also galactic beings, and we're connected to the cosmos. The further you are from soul and connection to your ancestors, higher self, and father creator, and mother creator, of course, the more decaying soul is. And that also affects the centripetal force of the earth, which allows for cataclysmic events and all of that. So the warning message is choosing soul is the pathway, the bliss frequency is the pathway. Being neutral and understanding that all of this is part of a cosmic plan of correction, course correction, and getting back to the part of the soul, the luminous part that is in faith, because faith is the antidote of fear. I'm not going to say love per se, but faith is the luminosity of the soul, and that is the antidote of fear, knowing that even if I don't understand why this is happening, I'm sure it's happening for a larger reason, and I can learn the lessons, embrace the purification process, and accept the lessons it has to offer me, because it's all about soul growth at the end of the day. This is a spiritual development matrix game school. So just remember,
well, I want a refund. Thank you, Dalia. That's very beautiful. I want to invite Margot to also comment on this. Margot, last words of wisdom.
Well, I think I found a solution, and it came to me unexpectedly, and it has to do with my Kundalini. I work with a teacher or a coach, And his work with me, with the body, is to stretch everything to the limit, but never go beyond the limit. And so all the joints are being completely stretched out. And at the end, there is the shavasana of complete relaxation, at which moment a kind of an orgasmic energy orgasm takes over, which then transforms itself into a huge laughter, followed by the feeling that we are in the perfection of creation as it is. There is no, discussion about it. You get this sense of perfection, and we get the sense that creation is a huge joke, that the joy in the body, the flow of the energy through the joints, is something that leads to this bliss, to this laughing bliss. And so, I feel connected to a lot of the masters I work with in my lifetime. And I'm very grateful for this. I'm very grateful because I feel that during the day, there's always a lot of joy happening, a lot of wonder. And I'm connecting this experience with all the profound meaning that you gave, today. And I'm very, very grateful because I teach seminars, and everything I learned today, including what you talked about, so it's like a big tapestry and everything is woven together, and it's a great teaching. So thank you. I'm very grateful.
That's so beautiful. She told me today, Dan, that she knew Alan Watts very well. I mean, they traveled for weeks together, and they were very close indeed. And she's got all these great masters. Margot has variously known and lived with and explored the world with over so many years. I think actually that's the book we need to extract out of you, rather like Gurdjieff's fantastic Meetings with Remarkable Men. Do you remember that book, Dan?
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. I think we need to get a Margot Anand Meetings with Remarkable. Anyway, Dan, I want you to close this today, and again, momentarily speak, would you, to the apocalypse unfolding in North America, and how that may or may not be a fractal of a greater kingdom of empire of evil, or an upshift to the heavenly realms. Just riff on what your take is on the status quo today.
Just before I do that, I don't know, Dalia being so young, if you know that Margot Anand there is one of the world leaders on teaching Kundalini, Tantra, and spiritual sexuality. She's like the grandmother of all this. So
wow. It's a pleasure to meet you. No, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
But
well, I'm still around, enjoying, teaching, sharing.
Oh, please, she's touring more than she's toured in the last 30 years. So
she's still young.
Her school is everywhere around. In fact, we're just today discussing, because I'm doing a tour of, 6 or 7 Mediterranean countries, including Egypt, later this year. And so we were just discussing maybe doing it together. In any event, I hope that we can make that announcement. But
Tahuti Nengizera Tahuti is the creator of the technology of the caduceus and the serpent and the Kundalini serpent. So
yes.
There it is. The caduceus is phase conjugate. Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Dan, you got the floor.
Yes. So then Sacha's question. Well, I have to tell my approaching fire apocalypse story if I can. We've been teaching the centripetal charge physics of rainmaking for 30 years. And at goldenmean.info/rain, we are at a village in Brazil, which is a catastrophic fire is approaching on film. And the teacher is there testifying how they solved the problem with the kids. They got the kids together and they made a circle of crystals and did a ritual with the absolute pure intention of those children. And on the film, the teacher is explaining how this huge rainstorm came up and saved the village at the last moment. Real testimony of real rainmaking with real kids, with real crystal, with a picture there. goldenmean.info/rain. Now, what is it about centripetal force, rainmaking, and can getting a soul keep us on track in the face of this oncoming great apocalypse, which is Dalia's message? She says about 23 years, I think, right now. Yeah. And so the point is, it is said that this is called the Atlantean fire crystal. It's also what made the sword of Poseidon work. And when this crystal implodes, and we have much on this at firecrystal.com, but basically it takes the Schumann harmonic cascade and it turns into what's called a phase conjugate pump wave. And out the tip, our famous friend Tony Rodriguez put the longitudinal energy out the tip of the crystal, and his girlfriend was seriously sick. Speaking of saving a girlfriend, and he saved his girlfriend, actually, Tony Rodriguez, who's now selling these in the form of obelisks. The point being that the message of what makes the centripetal force out of ensoulment, again, back to Atlantis. So we are taught that the fire crystals of Atlantis can be used for good or evil, were used in part to enslave people. And when enough people are enslaved, the whole culture loses centripetal force and gravity breaks. Yeah, this is the actual physics we electrical engineers want to say, is that when people become enslaved and don't have their bliss and connection to soul, gravity breaks. That's what we're teaching the physics here. So when large numbers of people have access to their bliss process, you know, when 1 million children sang the same song, 13 times it was measured, the solar flares went and became peaceful. We know the sun needed 1 million children to sing the same song at once because the sun needed that centripetal force. And so the message here actually is, if we understand that our connection to that oneness, that soul, that source that Dalia is talking about, is actually what makes the collective centripetal force, which urgently needs to be re-engaged, or the whole experiment, that's what Dalia is telling us, the whole experiment here is basically the symbol has to be plowed under, because the harvest is whether there are enough souls that can inhabit the heart of the sun with their own heart, really.
Yeah. May I say one last thing?
Please do.
Because it's coming through, and I think it's very important. I think when we mentioned the technology of Tahuti and the Kundalini and all of these deities and also gurus and big names, so Tahuti doesn't want to be worshipped, and I don't think this is not the way. So because you're giving your soul energy to a larger guru or a larger deity, and what he really wants is for you to understand your own power as an individual and to literally be empowered, which means you're connected to your own grid of ancestors and higher self and creator. And so you have your own link to the secrets of the universe, experiential knowledge, and the Kundalini technique is how also you understand how you make clouds and you generate rain and you keep the Nile River flowing and you keep the earth in harmony and connection. So when you understand how to work with Kundalini and use it to harmonize the earth grid, the magnetic lines of the earth grid, you can create a flow, emanation of grace. What you were talking about, Sacha, is really that bliss frequency when it emanates largely around you, surrounding you, and you can start to channel Kundalini into that bliss frequency around you. That will create clouds. And this is kind of the work that I've been doing here in Egypt as well, because there's not enough rain here. And so, of course, you know, the more people that understand this technology, the more the earth can be harmonized and be in its bliss frequency. And this is the new earth that we're all going to be a part of. You know, it's inevitable. This purification and tilling, and that the end result is a new earth with grace and bliss and shareable waves.
And you know why the saying tut tut, it looks like rain, is because Tutankhamun was a rainmaker.
Yeah.
Okay, very, very good. Well, taking this back to the preface to this discussion in the green room, when I was just showing some of the aerial drone footage I just took in Central Africa, where we have very, very large ambitions for regenesis of the entire planet, because that, incidentally, that land that I was showing you is the solar plexus of Africa. Literally, that's the zone. In fact, there's a huge confluence of primary water and then waterfalls coming in from all directions that creates a centripetal spin, a massive navel. It's far more spectacular than the Niagara Falls. It's far more spectacular than the Victoria Falls, in my view. And I've been to all of those falls. But I stood on a place in the middle of Africa where Livingstone himself never got to. He only got as far as Victoria Falls, or to the other side of where we were standing. It was forever to get there. I drove 6,000 miles in 12 days to get to this place, this navel of Africa, which is in a place called Barotse land. It is the lost world. And it has changed me forever. I'm back there again in April. But this is where we're focused on at the moment. And it seems to me that this panel, definitely, Dan, I would reach out to you anyway on this. I was planning to. But Professor Ralf, I'd love to reach out to you. And Dalia, I'd love to speak to you later this year when I get to Egypt about the project. Because, again, it really is all about the waters and about how we confluence now the wise dreaming that the new human is required as a duty of care. That is what this is all about now, is wise dreaming, and then using the waters of the world as the capacitors to augment that into the field. I mean, Dan's been speaking for years about young children standing barefoot in muddy water and being able to punch holes through clouds. Well, we completely understand the science of that now, but how do a bunch of jaded humanoids come together in this new fellowship now through the fog of this orchestrated pandemonium, this ordo ab chaos, this calamity that's unfolding all around the world with seismic weapons and God knows what else? How do we lean together in fellowship and enjoin the new dreaming and tether that dreaming to the waters, the primary waters of the world, and then use that as the technology to overthrow the lineage of Solomon, isn't it? I think it probably all goes back to King Solomon. Am I right?
Cannot mention the waters without mentioning Enki. Because Enki is the primary, is the water everywhere. It's Enki, it's Ea, it's the father of humanity, it's the God creator. And when you think of religion, what they refer to as God, and that is Enki and Ea. This is where lo, O in French comes from, EA. And Enki, as the father God also, he speaks
water
to everyone.
and earth. Earth and water were both named for Ea. Exactly.
Yeah. So we cannot. We have to mention Enki Ea as the father of Tahuti also, and father creator. And Enki speaks to everyone, and anyone who tells you that Enki only speaks to them is deceived, because God speaks to everyone.
Beautiful.
Sacha, your message was perfect. Really, I love your project, Sacha. Yeah, wonderful message. Thank you, Sacha. Really good work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, friends. Well, that's it. That's the end of this fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
Happy with that? You got more than you planned for today, right?
Oh, Margot, we love to see you smile. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Very good. Professor Ralf, so wonderful to meet you, and greatly looking forward to further acquaintance down the line. Thank you for joining us today from the fringes of Africa. Look forward to seeing you there. And Dalia, thank you so much from joining us from Cairo, my beloved Egypt. Look forward to seeing you later this year as well.
Look forward to it too. Thank you so much.
Dan, thank you so much, and send my love to Val, please.
She's right here. We send love.
Beautiful.
Bye, Val.